Welcome back to the National Hurricane Center. I'm Ken Graham. We are live here in our operations area where we're still hard at work keeping an eye on Hurricane Michael. Here's the latest information that we have. You notice, we're starting to cross with this eye and some of the core winds already moving into Georgia, and that will continue with time into central Georgia. Latest wind speeds 125 miles an hour. We're moving north-northeast at 16 miles an hour. So a couple things to really keep an eye on tonight. We start getting into the nighttime hours. It's dark. We still have a hurricane. This is, you start looking at close at the radar, you still have an eye. So portions of central Georgia, you're going to have these core winds continue to move, and that means some trees down. That means you have all this rain that's already saturated some of the soil, and that could be some power outages. So we really need to tell people you may be far away from the coast, but you still could have some trees down into the central portions of Georgia. So we got to be careful. We got to be off the roads. When it's dark, you come around a corner, you don't know if there's a tree down. So we're really trying to keep everybody safe as this hurricane continues to progress. So where do we go from here? So we look at central Georgia still as a hurricane, and eventually overnight we're looking at starting to become more of a tropical storm. The winds continuing to lessen, but notice a tropical storm all the way and exiting out into the Atlantic, and as a result some of the wind flow around that system could provide onshore flow. So we have some wind and some elevated tides in some areas in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Still got a large wind field, so it's one of these things that we could see some gusty winds. It's just better to be in a safe place. So taking a look at some of the other hazards associated with Hurricane Michael, look at the rainfall. We still could see some of those high values stretching inward into Georgia, 4 to 6 inches, even into the Carolinas. Start seeing some of these values. So once again, you take that for rainfall, and you think about some of the flash flooding potential, and you put the wind on top of it. It's still potentially a dangerous situation. So storm surge, we do have an updated map. It really, if you look at it, we still have some water that was pushed. I mean, you take a hurricane this strong, Hurricane Michael takes all that force to push that water into the coast, but also filling every nook and cranny of every creek in some of these rivers. We looked at some of the gauges earlier, and miles and miles inland you see those water rises. So once that wind relaxes, you're still not really going to have a situation that's going to blow that water out. So when you take that rain that has to drain and you push that water in, it takes time for that water to drain and get out of there. So the takeaway here is, look, with the hurricane might be headed into Georgia, but it's still not safe to be out. You have debris on the ground. You have a lot of destruction with some of the buildings and trees and power lines. At the same time, there's still water on the road. Really tough to see at night. Got to be careful with that. We have our storm surge expert, Jamie Rome, here, that's been working incredibly hard through this entire event. And Jamie, you look at some of the values, we're getting some of the pictures in. When you reflect on this storm and thinking about storm surge, what are some of your thoughts?
I don't know how we would have done this 5, 6, 7 years ago without the technology that much of the world saw on display. For the first time, the U.S. has explicit storm surge warnings to explicitly call out this hazard. We didn't have that 10 years ago. When I started, the high resolution mapping, inundation mapping, like what you see here on the screen, that you've been using to help communicate the threat and the risk, we didn't have anything like that. We used to have to just use words and phone calls. We used to have to work the phones when I first started storm surge 10 years ago, because we just didn't have these communication mediums that we have now.
Now we've talked about over and over, the category is not, really the whole picture of the hazards. The category talks about the wind. So 10 years ago we had conversations about that and started down this path. So Jamie's to be really, really commended for getting us to this point, because without a doubt some of this new technology is definitely saving lives. So we're really trying to go down that road to separate those capabilities. So we have a storm surge watch and warning, which we never had before. So that really highlights that. And by the way, 50% of the fatalities in these tropical systems historically is storm surge. So that's why we spent so much time on it. So Jamie, as we reflect this system is heading out of here, what are the last concerns that we need to be thinking about with the values that we're seeing here?
Water tends to be stubborn to relax back and go back into the ocean, especially in areas where the winds are still on shore. So if you just turn the wind off, the water would still take a long time to drain back in the ocean. And then when you keep the wind kind of pushing, the sun's about to go down. It's going to get dark. People are going to have a tendency to want to venture out. And it is incredibly unsafe to do so. You could have down power lines. Salt water and power don't go well together. You could have trees, all sorts of stuff in the water. The water will be deeper, and it'll kind of pull and sit in low-lying areas. And if it's dark, it may look like it's only this deep, but it could be this deep. If you drive your car in it, that could be bad. So people, as tempting as it is to want to go out and look around, really probably should wait till the sun comes up tomorrow to do that.
There you go, talking about these indirect hazards. We focus a lot on those direct hazards, the storm surge. We focus on the rain inland. We focus on the wind. But there's another factor here that Jamie's bringing up. It's venturing out and having an accident. You come around a corner, you can't see there's a tree down on the ground, and we've been talking about these indirect fatalities. Let's really talk about it. We're going to have power outages in some areas. There's damage outside. We don't know if the power lines are electrified or not. After these systems, not the first time to open the box of your chainsaw, read the manual, and figure it out. There's history of people getting hurt in this regard, using the generators, keeping them outside and not in the house. These are just things that you have to remember afterwards, because you got through the storm. Let's get you through the rest of it with these indirect fatalities and prevent all of them from Hurricane Michael. So this has been Ken Graham here, live here in the operations area at the National Hurricane Center, and we'll keep you updated as we have updates coming in from this hurricane.